flagship podcast, episode 299 from 20 Minute Tims. This is the Glasgow Derby preview. I'm your host Jamie, and I am joined as always by Stephen.
Good to be back.
And Melly.
Yes.
And this podcast is brought to you by our Patreon. Patreon.com/20 Minute Tims is where you will find us three leading the coverage for Glasgow Celtic, especially in this massive month of games for Celtic. We will be there before match, after match, covering it from all angles, including some fantastic features. It all starts from about £2.50 a month. If you want fan media, if you want fans covering the club, that's the way to do it. Support us on patreon.com/20 Minute Tims. Or if you just like this podcast and this is the flagship and you consume that and you want to support us and help us improve, that's the way to do that as well. There is a link in the bio below. Please check it out. Stephen, I wanted to get all the housekeeping out of the way.
Yeah.
It is a big month for Celtic, and it begins this weekend.
This is the big one, guys. I can feel it in my water. This is the big one. It's bigger than that. It's large. It's all. I feel like the whole season has been building up to this one game. Now, I'm not going to go as far to call it as a decider. Not going to do that. I'm going to hint at it. I'm going to strongly hint at it. But we'll get into all the details, all the various permutations and all that. But this is starting to feel like a big old week. The start of a big old month, but well, it starts with this.
Quite remarkable, Martin Melly, that Stephen said, it's a big game. It's bigger than that. It's large. And it's by no accident. Hard work has got us into the position. I mean, we come October, people thought the league was over. Ange was complaining about it. We were off the pace at Rangers. We said what we want to do is get into the January window, within touching distance of Rangers. We would take, even at the beginning of the season, we were saying, what would you take from this season? We're saying, do you know what? We would take losing the league, but just by, 4 or 5 points within touching distance. I know.
Little slugs back then.
Yeah. I know. Now, this game on the horizon, we could go 6 points clear.
Yeah, we can, and I'm looking forward to it. But at the same time, when Stephen was talking there, I was just thinking, wait a minute, we've got another one of these league games in a month's time where we're probably less than that. We'll probably go, no, this is actually the big one. This is the big one.
Don't say that. Build this episode up. We'll do this again.
So we're going to do it for that and the semi-final as well. They're all going to be the biggest ones, but this is what it's all about, because we've seen Celtic, we've beaten Rangers, we've seen at the start of the season how we get beat by them. So looking at this game going into it, there's more of a level playing field now, because come the start of the season, when you were saying October, very start of the season, I'd have been so fearful of this game. Now I'm just looking forward to it, and that is very rare in these sorts of derby games, because I think Celtic can win. That's not to say they will, but there's a very good chance because of the way we're playing.
In preparation for this podcast, Steve and I went back and watched the last game at Ibrox, partly just to remind myself how far we've come, because we have come a long way since then.
Quite well, by the way.
Well, that's it, because we lost that game, right? We lost that game. We lost it 1-0. But watching it back again, it was a wee bit closer than I remember. There was some good chances in the game. Odson Edward missed an absolute sitter.
That's the worst of them all, man.
The worst, was it Kyogo or Abada could have squared it for McGregor to put it away, and there was one other good chance. Another thing.
Kyogo went through it was Kyogo shot instead of crossing it to Christie, and Kyogo got put foul by Tony Ralston, and keeper came out and smothered it. That
was it, and then Joe Hart's gone up for a corner in a league game in September, whenever that was. So it was a lot closer than I remember it.
Yeah, I'm glad you helped me out with some of the details there, because when
seems like an age ago, doesn't it?
It does. And
team.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point. It's when we lose these games, I tend to just file them away forever and forget all about them. Like a lot of last season, like a lot of those games where we came up against them and get showing up. I can't picture them at all. I can't imagine them. So that one it's quite hard to put myself back then, because it felt very differently about the team. The serious questions been asked. Maybe it's starting to be dispelled a little bit, the notion that we've got the wrong man in, this guy's no got it and all that. But remember that we'd started this season rather, losing the first 3 away games and then lost to Rangers as well. And everybody was like, this is going really badly. So you're absolutely right. We have come an awful long way. I'll be honest. I mean, I feel like I do this on every one of the previews or the build-ups to these games that we do. Slightly nervous about it, but that's not because I think Rangers are a better team than Celtic. It's just childhood trauma. Yeah. Don't minimise my trauma. I just grew up in an era where we didn't win these games.
Trigger warning.
Yeah, exactly.
For Stephen, we're playing Rangers. Melly, that team on the day.
Oh, I was just about to say, I think the midfield 3 and front 3, only one of them's likely to start this weekend?
Yeah, well, you've got Joe Hart, who started, Juranovic, Starfelt, Stephen Welsh and Ralston at right back, David Turnbull, Callum McGregor, Ryan Christie in midfield, Furuhashi, Odsonne Edouard and Liel Abada all started the game. How many of those, Melly, are likely to start this weekend?
If McGregor will start out the front six maybe, but Abada's maybe get a chance, but I doubt it. So it's all changed for Celtic, and like even then at the back, Greg Taylor will likely start, won't he? And the absolute rock Cameron Carter Vickers will be in there, so it could be all changing. It's not as if it's bad changes. Like we've got options. Like I'm considering the midfield free, thinking, oh, it could be this, it could be this, but I'm not against any of the options really. And then up front as well, that who goes back fit? Do we put him back in, or is he an option off the bench? Who plays? Is it out wide? Is it Maeda or Abada? All good options, and like Giacomakis is banging them in recently as well. So, and most of these players have played against Rangers recently and beaten them. So it's not as if they're going into this complete novices. So that's why I'm quite looking forward to the game, but in that way that Stephen feels perversely looking forward to, but also perversely worried that, oh no.
Part of me, Stephen, feels like this game against Rangers, the first game that we're talking about, it's a bit of an anomaly. That wasn't Ange's team, and that was very early days for Ange Postecoglou and Celtic, and that was our period of bad form. And do you know what? As Melly said, we didn't really play that badly. I know the narrative from the time was, probably because of the games we lost at the time, another disaster. Can't believe we got beat at Ibrox. But we didn't really play that badly in retrospect. Then Ange's team have Rangers at Celtic Park and absolutely batter the life out of them, absolutely murdered them. I'm going to Ibrox here with some optimism. I think we are more likely to get the team that we saw at Celtic Park than the one that we saw at Ibrox back in September.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think there's all manner of reasons to believe that we're in a much better place then than now than then.
How far do you think we have come since then?
When I put a distance on it?
Yeah, if you could measure it in kilometres.
4.8. What's the distance between Parkhead and Ibrox? Because quite literally that distance.
Right.
But no, we're much, much better place. And some of the players, like there was still a lot of, I wouldn't say ill feeling about some of the players, but we'd started to lose trust rather in a lot of the players who were 1 foot out the door. I think Christie left almost immediately after that, did he? Edward was gone shortly after that, and that miss in that game has come to define his entire Celtic career.
So bad, but
forget all the other stuff he did, but it was basically
there was a narrative after that game, wasn't there, that he just couldn't be arsed. There was just get him out here, he can't be arsed.
He couldn't be arsed scoring that chance. No, he just fluffed his lines and made a number of mistakes in that game, including playing Kyogo out wide, which I don't think we're likely to see all that often again. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that he can't play there, but it's not ideal. So that was, I think, really just a case of trying to manage the resources that we had at the time. We're totally different now because we've got genuine options, but that was just a way to try and get Edward and Kyogo
Was
into
that the game Kyogo literally just stepped off the plane like the night before?
Nah, it was Hearts away.
Was that Hearts away? Aye.
Just an interesting one on this. Celtic made 3 subs. They brought in Tom Rogic, fine. Other 2 subs they brought in to change the game. Sorrow and Adam Montgomery.
I'm just looking at the subs in that game. Like, if you want to know how far Celtic have come, Stephen, why don't we look at the bench? The bench on that day was Bitton, Ayeti, Soro, Rogic, Urogide, Scott Bain and Adam Montgomery. I mean, with the exception of maybe Bitton, I don't expect to see any of those guys on the bench, or Scott Bain as well, obviously.
No, it'll depend on what Ayeti's up to these days as well. Ayeti, I mean, one thing I was thinking, just while Ayeti's fresh in our heads here, I was thinking today that I've heard a lot of people saying that Rangers can't play as badly again as they did at Celtic Park. Now, that's the kind of thing you hear a lot. You can play as badly as that. It's like you would say, well, Ayeti can't have as bad a season as he had last season again, but here he is doing it again.
That's where those words came out of our mouth basically on a weekly basis last season, didn't they? Will not be as bad this week. Well, worse.
It's not how it works. Is that see the bad guy that comes to fives? He's just terrible. What you don't say to him coming off the pitch is, can he play as badly as that again, mate?
I mean, the thing is, Ange might have Gio's number.
Yeah,
he might have Gio there. So, what are Rangers fans expecting that Ange's forgotten how to beat Rangers over the past wee while? I think the one thing that gives me encouragement is, I know they say this cliche. We should have like a jingle for this whenever someone comes up with a cliche, right? The form book goes out the window in Glasgow derbies. Not sure it does. I think the team who's in form tends to sort of come out on top. And our form recently has been very, very strong. And Rangers' form since the winter break, Melly, has been patchy.
Are you saying get in your form book?
Yeah.
Guilty. Get in your form book.
Don't like your form again.
The form book usually does stay in the window, doesn't it? Because the team that are playing well are usually the better team on the day.
There you go. There's your new cliche. The form book stays in the window.
I'm sure we've had an
stays in the
episode.
bookshelf. So
I'm sure we've had an episode in the past called "The Form Book Comes in the Window." So years ago.
But the difference being now is the stupid fans thing. The Rangers locking all our fans out and giving us this tiny allocation. And while I'm still confident Celtic can go and do the job, because we'll just play our own game, we'll not try to change too much of what we do, and if we do that we should be okay. But the thing is, that crowd will get their players up like it did for us.
I've got to interrupt you here.
But it could go the swing the other way as well. But at the same time, look, it depends how the game starts and who gets the first goal, because in these games the team that gets the first goal tends to win. But with the fan thing, I just hate it so much, man. It used to be a spectacle. It used to be the game you looked at and thought, if we win this could be brilliant. Yet most Celtic fans won't be able to go because shite bags.
Let me tell you something. I think this fan thing is going to bite them in the arse, because
hopefully
they have been well documented that they don't like playing at Ibrox front of it. They feel the pressure. They prefer it when the pressure's off. They prefer when there's no expectation on them, when there's no pressure. When there's pressure, they crumble. And see if we play against them the way that we play against everyone else, Stephen, and I don't expect Ange to approach this game any differently. High pressure, high press from the off. See if they're not starting to get a grip on this game by about 10 and 15 minutes. Their fans are going to go tonto, and they're going to have 60,000 Rangers fans on 50,000 Rangers fans on their back. Pick me up on the important things here. They're going to have 50,000 Rangers fans on their back, and I just think they think they're playing a clever game here by locking Celtic fans out the stadium. I think it's going to bite them in the arse.
Yeah, I think so.
It must be said, there's 700 people getting tickets. It doesn't count for anything. It's still full house.
700. It's such a hilarious number as well, because it was 8,000 back in the day, and then it was 800. So they've now given us 700. So they must have had a meeting about this, thinking, what's the pettiest thing we can do? Is it 0 or is it 103 tickets? Can we get away with 799? Or no, just make it 700.
You suggest that Rangers Football Club are petty?
No, I wouldn't dream of it.
The establishment club?
Yeah.
What
quintessential British petty club.
The famous.
Let me tell you something. I would not call Rangers Football Club. It's not like they pulled out of a glamour multi-million pound friendly because Celtic fans on the internet were winding them up about it, that their fans got so angry.
I just made up that we got a higher fee. It might be true, it might not be, but we just basically made it up and let it stick, and they get absolutely furious about it. I saw a statement that if you're unaware of what we're talking about, they have officially now pulled out of this Ange's homecoming tour in Australia, in Sydney.
It wasn't even called that.
No,
that was us that called it that.
That was just unofficial branding. One of the reasons given is that we were basically refusing to use the tag Old Firm.
Why are they so?
We didn't die.
Why are they so desperate to use it when we don't want to be a part of it?
I know.
It's everything they do at like a board level seems so petty, so petty. And then see, when I saw that they pulled out of it, I just thought, we've played a blinder here, right? Celtic didn't say a thing. They just went, we've signed up for this thing. Here's the details. They didn't even announce what teams were playing in it. And all it took was some Celtic fans on Twitter bamming up the Rangers fans. Rangers fans were protesting their own games. And then the board pulled out. And I just thought, this mentality doesn't get you very far. And it's the same mentality, Stephen, as you touched on, that brought about this petty move to lock us out the
Rangers,
ground.
as a club, and I'm not talking new club, blah, blah, blah. But Rangers as a club, they couldn't be more divorced, could they? They're absolute divorced dad. They turned the wains against us, wandering the street, still with their wedding ring on, the long divorce. It's still the Old Firm. It's absolutely embarrassing. They're Lawrence Fox. They're the Lawrence Fox of the football world. But to go back to the game,
yes,
if we must, I know I said up front that they can't play as badly as they did in that game. That is true to an extent in a different context, because I don't think they can play the same way again.
No.
I don't think they can afford to do that. I expect big changes from them, particularly in midfield. They can't let Celtic away with that again, just ran straight over the top of them. So I don't expect to see certain players, and I expect them to shore it up quite a bit. But the fans thing is absolutely pathetic. To tell the truth, see if I had somehow, I didn't get a ticket obviously, but if I don't know if I would
Hear
go to
that?
that. Aye.
Three important podcasters
Aye.
couldn't even get a ticket for the game.
Locked out. But
Disgraceful.
I don't know if I'd fancy going to that anyway. To be
I'd
honest,
love to go, man.
I just it's so like, I've got better things to do in my Sunday than sit around getting showered with piss and called a Fenian bastard, and that's just in the house. But I just think that the atmosphere will be absolutely horrible. The songbook will be absolutely vile and all that. And I wish it would go back to just being back in the old days, back how it was. But it's so tragic.
Let's not forget that the reason we're locked out is because they get sick of seeing us
Yeah.
party
exactly,
every time we beat them. Celtic obviously have launched the season tickets today. When I was talking to someone at Celtic, I was like, does that mean we are going to get them back in for the return leg at Celtic Park or the next time? He says it's probably going to be 700 Rangers fans, whatever it was that wee corner. I'm really, really torn on it, because I do like the atmosphere when it's like the higher opposition. And I like the atmosphere at Ibrox when we've got the full house there and all that. But that atmosphere at Celtic Park was a different class.
Yeah, it was great. It was one of the best nights we've had this season. I absolutely loved it. But it kind of felt like that was what's the word I'm looking for? Just what you thought. Celtic have completely arrived this season. We knew how good the football was, but we had to go out and beat them, and we done it. And there was that sort of relief and joy at the same time. But when you're thinking back to games and beating them, there's nothing better than seeing them streaming out or being raging, or as soon as you score, you have that second elation, then you remember they're there and you turn to them.
Yes.
I absolutely love it. And the days we've had out at Ibrox as well, like, that's unbelievable. That's some of the best days of your Celtic supporting career is that. So I think we need to get back to that, because I think it is a spectacle as well. For
They've killed it as a spectacle, haven't they?
So if it turns out the way it probably will it might do this season, that Rangers win both their home games and Celtic win both their home games, what's the point in the game then, really? There obviously is a point to the game, but if you're just going to pull it in with all your own fans because you're too scared to have people partying in your home ground, then you're just going to win those games. So the league's not going to be decided by those games. You're not really getting an advantage at all, are you? But in what you say, Jamie, as well, if Celtic can go out and impose themselves on the game at the start, and Rangers are struggling with possession, or they aren't attacking as much as their fans will want, I'm really interested to see how that'll play out for them, because Celtic can go into this game, and if they win it, they're in a great position. But if they avoid defeat, we're still in a really, really good position. Rangers, anything but a win is a disaster for them, really, a real disaster for them. And going into these games, a lot of the time when it has been close, it's the team that want it more. But I haven't seen that from this Rangers team. They seemed last season they were just better than us. I don't know if they've got that.
Last season doesn't count, man.
Exactly. I don't know if they've got that sort of fight in them that
Cup.
if they have to go out and win a game against us, they can go and do it. So I'm going to be interested to see how it plays out in that way, because the way we'll play, we'll just play our own game and try and keep as much possession as you want. And if we're doing that, the Bears in the stands will be ravenous.
Rangers are not going to win their 2 home games. We're going to pump them next. We're going to pump them. That spoiler for the end of the podcast prediction set, but we're going to absolutely pump them. Stephen, who frightens you in the Rangers team?
Well, as I said, I expect the lineup to be very different.
Sorry to interrupt, but just as we record this, pictures have emerged of Alfredo Morelos arriving at Glasgow Airport on crutches, and a tracksuit that doesn't fit him.
That's what frightened me. That tracksuit,
a tracksuit that doesn't fit him, and a silly red hat. Right? Do you believe he's injured?
Not buying it. No.
Do you believe he's injured, and how much of a blow for Rangers is it if he's injured?
Huge. I know I don't.
He is huge.
Yeah, he is. He's tubby little funster from Colombia. I don't. He didn't play in the previous game, did he? I think it was Roof through the middle at Celtic Park from memory.
Yeah.
So
he was on international duty, Timmy, wasn't he?
So he was. That's right, of course, because we made a deal with the Beaks at the SFA. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So that game, I expect them to be very different. I expect them to have a totally different midfield. I don't know if they play Arfield. I expect them to play
Lundstrom probably.
Lundstrom's an option. Jack probably, just to kind
Ramsey, the other one.
of stiffen things up a little bit in midfield. Ramsey, he has become a running joke on this podcast and wider because he's barely played. He's the biggest signing ever in history of Scottish football. On that, can we agree that if he does nothing between now and the end of the season, he's officially the biggest flop in
100%.
Scottish football?
But
Because you can't be the biggest signing without being the biggest flop.
You make me nervous, Stephen, because I have said this in the podcast before. He's a quality player. He hasn't contributed to this point, but he is capable of contributing at a level. And there is a history of players who only ever turn up for a Glasgow derby. You know what I mean? We've seen it before. So I'm quite happy to make these bold statements after the podcast. I'm not usually a nervous man, but the Ramsey thing is making me nervous.
Yeah, I've memed myself here.
Yes.
Exactly where I was going with it. As much as he's become a bit of a joke, there's no denying that he is a very, very good player. What I said at the time, with the enormous caveat that if he stays fit, and he hasn't, if he stays fit, he is Rangers' best player by a mile, by an absolute mile. Just on paper, in terms of reputation and stature in the game, he is easily Rangers' best player, and he's not to be dismissed. As funny as it's been that he's barely played, if he plays in this game, I will be. I mean, you asked me who scares me, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that. But it would be a concern because the midfield fell apart at Celtic Park, and if they put in Jack and Ramsey and maybe Lundstrom, I don't see that happening again to the same level.
I think this game's going to be decided in the midfield. And if, say, for instance, they start Jack, Ramsey, and Lundstrom, there's a lot of physicality there.
Yeah,
there's a quality in passing. In Ramsey, Lundstrom's pretty good at moving the ball. He's like a Scott Brown type back in the day a bit, can move the ball forward. What midfield three, because that's the question Celtic have got, what midfield three do we play to combat that? Because you've got McGregor in there, good player, but no very physical, not hugely physical. Rio Hatate, physical, but erratic and his form's a bit iffy. And then you've got that third spot, which near Bitton, O'Reilly, Rogic, McCarthy.
Runners.
Yeah.
Turn Robo Dave.
Sorrow the hero of the derby in the past. He could bring Sorrow back. Yeah, I've seen it suggested that Bitton might be a good option for this. I just can't.
Remember the Bitton meter? Bitton meter.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a lot of goodwill for Near Bitton recently because he has done okay. I think that's basically it. But we've done the massive fan overcorrection where he's been outstanding this season.
Yeah.
I don't think he has. I'm not a hater. I'm not a near hater, but do I see the value in playing him in this game? I just can't, because it would mean I just want as many of these players in as possible. I want McGregor in there, and I want that front five sort of thing.
It's the midfield that worries me.
Yeah, I want them overwhelmed, and I think the way better to do that is to have McGregor at the base of it and two others.
Spring has sprung, and our friends at Manscaped have the tools for some spring cleaning in your pants. Trust me, your confidence is going to be blooming like the flowers upcoming this spring. Time to clear out that winter bush and join 4 other million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. If you go to manscaped.com, use the code TIMS, you get 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped. And by using that code, you will also receive 2 free gifts. So head on over to manscaped.com, use code TIMS for 20% off, free shipping, and some free gifts. That's manscaped.com.
One of the main reasons I wouldn't play Beaton is because I think Rangers will try and press Celtic. When they know Celtic are going to play it from the back, we'll play a usual game, but they'll try and press us with their front three, and they can, apart from the last game, they're quite good at that sometimes. So Celtic will be coming up against a team that's decent in that, and we don't get that an awful lot. So what we need to do is move the ball from defence into midfield quickly. That's not what Neil Beaton does.
No.
But Callum McGregor receives the ball in the half turn and he can get forward quickly. And I think that's well, there's a lot of reasons I wouldn't play Neil Beaton, but I think that's the main reason for me, because we need to get the ball moving quickly, because we've seen the second Hatate goal. Rangers sat off us. We got the ball into midfield, down the wide, and then cut inside and got it to Hatate, bang, 2-0. If we can do that round them and get the ball up the pitch, they're going to be they're going to have their backs to goal. They're going to have to move back, and I think if Celtic can do that and pressure them and keep them up where we want them, it'll be so much more beneficial for us. And I think as well with the Rangers midfield, I think Ryan Jack's the one we need to stop having any influence in this game, because while Lundstrom and Ramsey are better players, Jack's the one that sort of makes them tick for me. So I think we need to get energy in and around him. So if I was going, I'm definitely having McGregor in there. I'd probably go with Hatate and O'Reilly, because it is sheer energy, sheer force that will be in there. They're not the best when it comes to tackles, but if we're pressing them, we don't really need to be tackling them. And if we're winning balls, we don't need to be flying into challenges. So I think that midfield three, it's done it before. The only other thing is Rogic coming in, but is he back from injury fully? He was training, but Rogic at Ibrox, it can go one of two ways depending on how the game's going. He has his smashing games, and he has the games he disappears. And I'm just thinking, look, if Celtic can stay in this game, be in it, either winning or a goal behind or drawing, and then with 60 minutes, you look at your bench, you've got Abada, Kyogo, Turnbull, Rogic. You're like, that's game changers there. So that will frighten Rangers. So I think if we can keep in this game at the start, get a leader withdrawn, get the energy in the midfield, and don't let them dictate, because that's the way they'll get it. It's only that midfield and the delivery from Tavernier will always do it, and you know what Ryan Kent's like. So just don't put a foot near him when he gets to the box, because you know what will happen.
It's his favourite.
Yeah, that's not an ITK reveal, by the way. We're just speculating about Kyogo being back on the bench. I don't want people tweeting us tomorrow saying,
I'd be training button.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I had heard that he's been basically fit for a couple of weeks now, so we're maybe holding.
Well, there's rumours that he's been fitter than we've let on.
Yeah.
In the hope that he doesn't get called up for Japan.
Smart stuff, yeah. Sneaky.
I always question that, though. I always think, like,
Feel like he'd want to play.
Well,
for
that's
Japan.
what I was saying. See, a player wants to play. Well, hold on, are you lying to my national FA here about how fit I am, so you don't want me to go? The Kyogo one's an interesting one, because Yakimakis is in good form. Stephen, he's been scoring the goals, but Kyogo is the better player. And when you have a player of the quality of Kyogo, you just no play him. Someone else made the comparison recently that, okay, Henrik Larsson was injured and we played other players in his place, but when he came back fit, he got right back into the team. Is Kyogo that level of player where you're like, look, Yakimakis, thanks for all you've contributed to this point of view, but we're going to play the absolute superstar, the better player we've got here. There's also the nature of the injury is if he's fit, he's fit. You know, if his hamstring's fine, he's clear to play. He's clear to play.
20th of December was the last 90 minutes. Well, he didn't even play 90 minutes. The cup final, and then
and look how good he did then.
Yeah, but then he came off the following week against St Johnstone, so he's not played since last year. The way he and Celtic plays a high pressing game, very difficult to throw in a game like that.
I wouldn't worry so much about Kyogo the way I'd worry about. I mean, look at the impact he made when he just arrived. Look at the impact these Japanese guys have made almost right off the rip. But we speak about it every week. It's not like, I don't think Kyogo's one of these guys right, he needs a couple of games to get up to speed. I think he would be chomping at the bit to go. We saw it at the cup final, as Ange said, Stephen, he was dying to play.
Yeah.
Came on and won the thing for us, more or less.
I do get the temptation. I do see it, because the Larsson to Hartson one is quite an apt comparison. You don't have to directly compare those two players to know that Kyogo probably is the Larsson to Giacomakis is Hartson. It's probably like scales up and down. So
What did you call him?
Scales up and what?
Giacomakis.
Giacomakis.
Oh, right, okay, that's fine.
All right.
That's definitely his name.
Yeah, that's definitely his name. Says it on his back. So I do get the temptation, but I think I'm in Melly's camp, but I just think it's just a wee bit.
I didn't say I was in that camp.
Well, okay, right. The one who's just not pouring cold water on it, but just dripping.
You just want to temper expectations a wee bit here about the Yakimakis starting.
Because there's fit and there's fit. There's shown it in training, and there's been pitched straight. It'd been pitched straight into a game like that. I wouldn't have concerns about him needing to get up to speed. But it would be so harsh on Giacomakis. And it's not even just about Kyogo being a better player. I want to see how Giacomakis does against Rangers, because he gave them a torrid time the last time. Didn't get on the score sheet, was unlucky. But I want to see that. I want to see, I've already spoken about the midfield just overwhelming them in the last game. I want to see as close to that as we can again. I don't imagine Rangers will allow that, but I want to see that. I also want to see, and I'm sort of jumping ahead to talk about the front three here, what Maida and Giakoumakis can do, just giving them all sorts of problems.
Question for you, Stephen
Go
and Jamie.
Okay.
60 minutes of Kyogo and then Giakoumakis comes on, or 60 minutes and Giakoumakis and Kyogo comes on. Kyogo's probably the better player, but what's going to run them more ragged? I'd probably say Giakoumakis starting them with the physicality and then bringing on Kyogo, something completely different.
Kind of depends with the game's pitch, though, doesn't it? If we're 2-0 down,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? If we're 3-0 up or whatever. I think you probably start with Kyogo. I think you start with, because he's the better player. So you start with him.
It's hard to argue with that, isn't it?
And then he burns out, and then you bring on your second best player.
Is that one? But it does depend how the game's going, because if it's on a knife edge, you're 1-0 down or one each, and then you're going, I can get Kyogo on to win it, but does bringing Giakoumakis on to win it have the same sort of impact for me? I'm not quite sure.
The reason I'm pretty confident about this game is because I don't think Rangers play many teams like us. I don't think they played any team like us. Not even Dortmund are going to press Rangers the way that we press Rangers. And you touched on Maeda. I mean, how good are their centre halves in the ball? Goldson's okay on the ball. The rest of them are so. Those centre halves are going to be absolutely under so much pressure every time they get on that ball. Maeda's like a wee dog chasing a ball in a back garden. He does not let it go. And they don't get that. And they're going to have to adjust to that.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they line up in defence, because what I would add on to the bit about Kyogo versus Giakoumakis, if you're Goldson and another, whether it's Balogun or Helander, I'm not sure how how they're likely to line up, because I remember turned up to a game where Balogun played it right back once and actually was very good. So I'll be interested to see how they line up there. But if you're one of these guys, who would you rather play against, Giakoumakis, or who would you'd be more fearful of? Or it is. So I suppose that's a different angle on it as well. The defence, how good are they on the ball? I'm not sure. I expect that to be different as well from the last game, because I just don't think you can play Barisic after his last performance. I know a lot of water's passed under the bridge since then, but he was so catastrophically bad at Celtic Park that I don't really see how you can pitch him in again. So maybe they go with Bassey plus someone else at centre half, because
Bassey might play left back.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, Bassey at left back, then another centre half in, whether it's Balogun or Helander or whoever they've got fit. I'm not too sure on those, but I don't see how you can put him back in, because I saw the goals again.
Horror show,
I saw the goals again just today, and that for Abada's goal, he just sits down in the middle of the box before the ball's even.
It's mad.
It's just inexplicably bizarre performance.
What I liked
him.
about that was, even though it was entirely his fault, he did still try the mate.
Put his hand up for offside.
For a brief, he would pointed at whoever was meant to block the cross. Like for just a split second, the ball goes in the net. He's in his arse and he goes, and then everyone looks up and he goes, right, fair enough.
I wasn't ready.
I think that's where Celtic can get a lot of joy this weekend, is down both flanks, because as we know, Tavernier goes forward, and that sort of gap that Rangers have always left between Tavernier and Goldson can get in there. And when you look at the way Celtic played in the last game, going down the wing, the Abada goal you spoke about was just quick play, quick throw in, cross comes in, and then Abada comes in from the other side. But it's going to look like it's going to be Jota and Maeda, and you just think it's a torrid time if they can pin their fullbacks back and not let them out, because we know Tavernier's got the good delivery. I think we can get in there. And just one more thing, and a wee thing for Giakoumakis as well. Set pieces, Giakoumakis could be crucial for Celtic as well, because we know the last game at Ibrox was decided by a set piece. Who was commentating that day just stuck all the blame on Starfelt, despite it not being his fault. So if we don't concede from set pieces, we know fine well at Celtic don't give up a lot of chances. So that's just one more thing for Giakoumakis.
When's Giakoumakis getting his booking? The Chris Sutton clause. When's it? 12 minutes.
But it happens behind Willie Collum. He'll hear something behind him.
Father William.
Yeah, he's the referee. Willie Collum, with that refereeing style of a guy that's just woke up from a bad dream in the centre circle of a Glasgow derby. He's like, oh, foul, throw in. He just panics, doesn't he? He's an absolute panic merchant.
One of those dreams where he's woken up in the centre circle. He's got tights on instead of his shorts and stuff like that. Yeah, he's gone to school wearing his tights instead of trousers.
That's the refereeing style of someone with the panic that's went to school in the scud. That's what he referees. Like, I think there's going to be plenty of bookings. I think Willie Collum isn't one of these like steady hand on the tiller referees. The game either goes to pot with him not booking people when he should, or just throwing yellow cards about like confetti.
That's when the crowd comes into play, won't it? Because every challenge at Celtic make the crowd will just be baying for a yellow
Can
card.
we say now he's definitely going to make an arse of something?
Oh, that's a given, and at least one thing, and that is a worry for me as well, because Willie Collum, Bobby Madden, there's nobody I'd go, the ref won't have a say in this, because that's what happened. The refs in this country seem to be booked by crowd noises and all that sort of thing. So as soon as Celtic make any sort of challenges, it'll be red card, and even if it's not a yellow card challenge, he'll give a yellow card anyway, won't he?
It's going to be tasty, man. I'm just picturing in my head tackles flying about. I mean, I don't expect any protection from Willie Collum. You're looking at players like Ryan Jack. He's a dirty player.
There was one recently where he kind of ran in. He kind of ran in. It looked as if he'd studded him, but he kind of side-footed him. He kind of changed his weight just at the last second. Bit sneaky like that. But I was thinking there that could we sort of roll into our predictions that we'll eventually do on this? Could we roll in a sort of mad shite Willie Collum will do a prediction as well? Because I was thinking, try to come up with something good, but is it beyond them to book the same player 3 times or something?
Well, when you mentioned that, there's the first thing that I thought was send off the wrong player.
Yeah.
But that is plausible.
Yeah.
With the likes of Willie Collum, he could, if there was a Stramash in the box, you could see him flashing a red card at Matt O'Reilly, and then the
John
replay.
Kennedy.
You show the replay shows that Matt O'Reilly's nowhere near the incident or something like that. Yeah, there will be. Do you want to try and pick a specific, or do you just want to agree there will be some mad shit?
Notable mad shite will happen in the game.
Yeah, the notable mad shit. Melly, who can hurt Celtic in that Rangers team?
I think it will be
Willie Collum.
Well, that's the most obvious one, but the set pieces thing kind of worries me a bit, because they're just a more physical team than us.
Plus, we don't give up many chances in open play, so if they're going to get their chances.
We have seen this in the very recent past. Goldson getting goals against us, Helander getting goals against us. Was it Katic previously has scored against us? So it's nothing new for Rangers centre halves. I know he's not at the club at the moment, but it's nothing new for Rangers centre halves to be stealing in from set pieces and getting goals.
But I still can't get away from the fact that Brian Kent seems to just dance his way in and out in these games, and he seems to be the bigger the opponent, he shows up. So I think
that's one call. I know we joke about it, right? But he is dangerous in many respects, but he's a diving wee toad.
He is that, and it's just, but he dives, and
Colin loves to give fouls.
If
and
you're
these
going
are
to
the
get
things
a penalty for most of the time, you do it. I mean,
these are things players look at. They look at what refereeing the match, and they'll know, he gives free kicks for God knows what. So there'll be a lot of diving for Ryan Kent.
Oh, there'll be loads, and that's why another reason why I wouldn't want a guy like Neil Beaton in there, because he will make that rash challenge. And when I look at the Celtic backline, when I think it's going to be Carter Vickers, Starfelt, Taylor and Juranovic, while it's not massive, there's nobody that I'd think would maybe lose their temperament or make a silly challenge, unless it could happen, but it just doesn't seem like that's the kind of thing. But if you're going to say who's going to get a red card in the Celtic team, I'd go with Hatate. I think it would be a challenge from him that would just be not malicious, but just ill-timed and just too vigorous.
That's a honestly really handsome point. Not the question asked though. Stephen, I said to in the Rangers team,
Ryan Kent.
Others, again, we'll need to see the lineup, because I'm not buying the Morelos thing. It might well be injured, but just as soon as
iffy, isn't it?
Yeah, Roof has scored goals against Rangers against Celtic in the past for Rangers. Sakala, is he likely to play? I don't really.
What did I say?
They too had COVID, but they should be back.
I think
the boy they got from Man U, Diallo.
He's not featured for a long
time.
I know,
he just disappeared.
Play. He showed himself up in the game at Celtic Park as just, a talented player from all accounts. He's transferred for big money, but
doesn't he fancy it, the Glasgow Rangers? Does he?
A bizarre transfer, an absolutely bizarre transfer to bring him in. So I don't expect to see him at all, unless it's a Hail Mary in the last 5 minutes.
What does this game mean for Ange?
Oh, it could be huge, but at the same time, I don't think it's a disaster if we get beat. It will still be clear by goal difference, and looking at Celtic's remaining games, I'm still confident we can do it. But it could be that sort of Martin O'Neill at Ibrox game where you go, you know what, we are onto something here, but we're definitely onto something, because you can't have a manager going through his time at Celtic or Rangers and not going away from home and winning, because these are the big games, these are the ones you need to win. So it could be, I think it could be monumental for him, because if we win this Sunday, we're looking very good for the league, but also gives us that belief going into this semi-final as well, that look, we can beat this team, whether it's at home, whether it's away, whether it's at Hampden. So it could be huge for him. And after seeing the season tickets come out today and that team talk he done before the cup final, this is what Andrew's made for. These are the kind of games that he will relish, and I'm sure he'll be looking forward to it.
There's a lot of talk, Stephen, about, Ange could prove people wrong, and I think it's a bit condescending. I don't think Ange needs to win this game to prove anyone wrong. I think all the Celtic fans are really on board. I had to listen back to our reaction to Ange. We produced a on the day reaction to Ange getting announced, and I remember thinking at the time, this is a disaster here. Who is this guy? Yeah. Not quite Alan Brazil levels,
Appointing Alan Brazil.
I can't get to anything Alan Brazil levels of anything. Redness, weight gain, intoxication,
just mass.
There's Alan Brazil is levels above me on absolutely everything. But the indignant reaction to the Postecoglou thing will go down in history. We were cautious but excited across the board, really. I went back and listened to it, and we were like, look, we're nervous about the board, not the man. That was the takeaway from what we were. We're cautious but excited. But I think Ange has proven way before now that he's a manager of substance. He's a great football manager. But there's always, as you said, Millie, there's always that one game. I think he had it at Celtic Park, but beating them at Ibrox is something different. And I think, I just think that if there's anyone else left unsure of Ange by now, where have you been? What are you doing?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous that you're unsure of the guy after seeing him for so long in this season. But this Rangers game, I think you win this. I think it's over. I think the league's over. And I think... And Ange will not let the team slide from that position. I just don't think it's in his DNA. I don't think it's in this Celtic team to go 6 points clear and let it slide. Now, I know Martin O'Neill's Celtic team at the 5 points clear with 3 games to go or something like that in his last season. I don't think... It's just Ange... I just have so much trust in him that he just wouldn't let it happen. It's just, for me... I know this is famous last words. I know I do this on the podcast all the time, but if we beat Rangers and go 6 points clear, I've got so much faith in that manager that I just don't see it slipping from our grasp at that point.
It's a good lead. It's a good position to be in. That's what I would say.
Do you think it would change Ange's mentality for the games? Do you think how would it be for him? Is what I suppose what I'm trying to ask.
Do you mean, is he going to consider it sort of almost like one hand on the trophy if we win this game?
Yeah, would he be like, I've arrived, I've done it, I've got one hand on the trophy now?
No, it just doesn't seem the type. When he says, I know that to an extent, we've spoken before about how, the players and the manager say we don't pay attention to what Rangers are doing, but that's impossible. It's impossible. So we do sort of take that with just a slight pinch of salt when he says things like that. But see when he says that, or see if he was to come out after this game and we'll win it handsomely and we're 6 points clear and at least 16 goals ahead in goal difference as well. If he comes out and says that he's not interested in talk of the title, I'll believe him. I'll actually believe him. Now, again, I say it's a good position to be in. It's certainly better than the position Rangers will be in if we win this game. But you're right to say that Celtic have thrown away leagues from really good positions before, so I won't be counting my chickens. Again, I mentioned it up front, childhood trauma. I'll never get over it. I was brought up in some bad eras, so I will never, until we've got the hands on the trophy, I'll never fully buy into it, but it's going to be a very good position to be in. It could boil down to, not mathematically, not arithmetically, we can't win the trophy, we can't win the title in this game. But if we do go on to win the title, we probably will look back on this moment as the clincher, basically.
That's. I mean, there's just something. I've just got so much faith at the moment. I'm not crying. Just did the GI. I've got so much faith in this Ange's team. I just think it's a completely different prospect. I know Rangers are a strong team. I know they're a good team, and I know they get players to hurt us. But I just think. And I think Ange is the better manager. Yeah, I think we've got the better players.
See, a final thing before we move away from that, where I was going with the Martin O'Neill chat as well. I think not only is it an unfair comparison because it was 16 to 17 years ago or whenever that happens, right? So it's a long time ago. But the difference here, not a difference in mentality of manager, but that team was on the way down. That team was coming to the end of its cycle and all that kind of stuff with aging players and all that. But I just think this team is just getting better and better, just getting hungrier and more, just more Ange-like, really. I think I'm fully confident that this team has got the bit between the teeth, all those cliches and all that. But it's in sight. As much as we're not going to talk about winning the title on this day, the finishing line is in sight here, and I just feel like this team has got enough about it to keep that going.
I still feel even if we lost at the weekend, it wouldn't be a disaster and we can still go on and win the league. So that's how much faith I have in the manager and this team. Look, you're going away there, and I still think the fan thing will play a massive part in this. So we could beat them back at Celtic Park. We can, if we lose this game, I fully expect us to go on and win the next 6 league games anyway. So I still have massive faith in us to do that. It's just, it can be a defining game for them where you just go, like I've already said, we arrived when we beat them at Celtic Park. But again, this could be it. This is definitely the start of something special. But at the same time, draw or loss isn't a draw is not a disaster, but a loss as well. I still think Celtic can get back on track straight away,
unless we lose 17-0 and
the goal difference is gone. If we do, Stephen, people will clip that. You'll be jinxed if we lose 17-0. Listen, on the morning of the game, we are going to be here with the Glasgow Derby breakfast. We'll be reviewing the papers and the press before the game. Stephen chuckles because it was a right good laugh. It was a right good laugh last time. That's video content on Patreon. After the game, we're going to be doing live reaction, more video content right after the game, and obviously we'll have the usual podcasts and stuff. And then following the game, we'll obviously be back here doing the flagship podcast. But Patreon is the place to join us on Sunday for full coverage of that game. Stephen, is it winner take all?
Yeah. Do you know what?
I think it's half and half.
Right, winner takes half.
No, it's winner takes all if Celtic win, right? For us. But if they win, as Melly said, I think we can still beat them at Celtic Park.
So it's not winner takes all.
so
what? So it's no winner takes all then?
So it's not.
So, well, I asked the question. I said, is it winner takes all? Yeah.
No, it's not. And
bullied on my own podcast. Unbelievable.
I wanted that to be like a good big soundbite there where we've nailed our colours to the mast, categorically stated it's win or bust, but it's not. I think we're in a good position, and I just agree that it's not a total disaster if we lose. It's a good psychological boost for them if they win at home, in front of their baying hordes. But that's all it will be.
Answer this: why do I feel like we're going to pump them? Why am I confident?
Because that's kind of what, like, anyone who consumes any kind of Celtic media, and I'm not talking about podcasts.
You were going to say I consume there to come to that conclusion.
Anyone who consumes poppers will come to. But no, anyone who consumes anything that comes out of Celtic, whether it's press conferences and these little videos that have been coming out, and in training right at the start of the season, all these wee snippets and all that, can't like fail to be sort of confident.
Intoxicated.
Exactly.
I'm Alan Brazil levels of intoxicated when it comes to how much I love Ange.
Yeah, that's dangerous levels of intoxication. Maybe ease back a bit from that, but I think that's it. I think that's not only has he put this into the team, it's kind of permeated the fans as well. Like it's kind of swept through the most fans. I can't speak for everyone. I'm sure there are one or two wrong people out there still naysaying, but I think that's what it is. I think Ange has basically managed and coached all of us, right? Not only the players.
Yeah, and it's one of these ones now where I look forward to the games now rather than last season. I was absolutely terrified of them and just wanted them out the way. But looking forward to the game. I don't think it'll be winner takes all because, as I said, I still think Celtic can pull it back.
Do you agree if we win though, the league's over for them?
Probably pretty much, yeah. But I'll never say that because I'm a shite bag. But if I'm being honest, I think it'll be a draw at the weekend. Possibly even 0-0.
I think Celtic will win, but I think we'll go behind. I think we'll come back to win. I think we'll come back to win the game. I think Rangers will score. But we just don't give up a lot of chances.
I was thinking about that as well. I was thinking about going behind in this game, and statistically, it would show that more often than not, as you said earlier, the team that scores first more often than not wins this fixture. I feel like this is different as well. I'm not going to say anything silly like going behind in a game doesn't
17 now.
no, but going behind in a game doesn't make it harder to win the game. Of course it does. By its very nature, it makes it harder to win the game. But I still have a lot of confidence in this Celtic team, just not losing the head. Like, we've not really seen that. How often over the last couple of seasons in Europe and things like that, it became the running joke on here about how, like, as soon as we concede in Europe, the heads go down. We just concede more and more and more. And I know that's happened a couple of times this season. I don't have that feeling about it for big games about this team. So whether I'm completely deluded, we sit here a couple of days before the game and it could go a completely different way. But even if Celtic go 1-0 down, I'm not going to be panicking about it.
No, I've got and that's what it comes down to. I've got a lot of faith in Ange that if we lose a goal, I think we're always, and we've got the quality of players. It's just, I just think, and it's not a cop out, but I just think last season, for so many reasons, it bears no resemblance to what's happening at Celtic this season. There's no competition between what happens at this season. So you look at this season, and this season's record tells you we've got the league form to back up, we've got the players to back up the league form. We've got the performance at Ibrox when we were no even ready with half a team that wasn't as bad as people seem to think it was and remember. And you've got that game at Celtic Park, which was nothing even close to a contest. We just ran right over the top of them. And all these things and the quality of manager we've got, and just the fact that even the small things like no European football for us now. So more rest time, and also conversely to that, more time on the training pitch for the manager to get his ideas across, more time to prep for games, more time to rotate the squad and all that. You look at Rangers, they've really only got their starting 11. There's one or two changes they can make, but their squad doesn't have the depth that ours does. A few terrible transfers I've seen to that. I just think all signs are pointing to a positive Celtic outcome. With that, with all the confidence I've got brimming, here's my team. Tell me if you disagree or agree, right? Joe Hart in goal.
Okay.
Right, okay. Barkas, a real curveball. Shows some Greek loyalty there, but some people forgot he was at the club still a bit. Right, Joe Hart, Juranovic.
Yep.
Taylor.
Yep.
Carter, Vickers and Starfelt.
Yep.
No arguments here.
No arguments there. McGregor,
yes.
Hatate, O'Reilly. Curveball potential, David Turnbull.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I've been thinking about that. I would maybe be tempted to go with Turnbull and O'Reilly. I think O'Reilly's a definite.
If you're not going to put Kyogo in after 3 months out, you're not putting David Turnbull in. We've all worried about his stamina and that. You're not throwing him in at Ibrox. Come on.
Okay, potential, right? Front three. Jota, Maeda, Furuhashi.
I don't. Yeah, as per previous discussion, I see the temptation, but I don't think it will be. I think it will be Giakoumakis. There are obvious.
Maswenya,
Stick with Giakoumakis.
There are arguments to be made for Jota on the left, Abada on the right. I'm not compelled by any of them. I think it's
forgot all about Forrest.
Yeah, I think he's been injured recently as well, hasn't he? Or he didn't play in the last game. But I don't remove either Jota or Maeda for Abada.
No,
just yet. I think you mentioned earlier.
Even though he scored against Rangers before,
he did, and he's been a dangerous player. Gone off the boil a little bit recently. He has been very, very good this season. But I think
the roster for Australia.
No,
Australia.
I was going to say wow.
I think it was under 21.
Right. Nah, it doesn't count. Remember we started pretending to be interested in under 21 football when we had like Dembele and Edward and all that.
Yes.
Edward was playing for them when he was 27 and stuff like that. So I don't have a compelling enough reason to put Abada in. He has been dangerous this season, but I think you go with your. It's not just about form players. We've already spoken about form books and stuff like that. It's not just about that, but I feel like those front three, the Jota, Maeda and Giakoumakis, can give them all sorts of problems, and all different problems as well. You've got serious hard work, you've got a dribbler, serious dangerous dribbler, you've got goals in there as well. I think that's how you go with it.
Do you hear Joe Hart on the, I can't remember the name of the podcast, it was a silly name though.
Something stiff, up the stiffest.
Up this very silly name. Yeah, he was on a podcast, he was talking about his career to date.
Podcast with silly names? That's weird.
I know that's us sitting here. Some people will wonder, why the fuck do you call it that podcast? And do you know what? We can't even, well, it's because it used to be 20 minutes long, and it's evidently not 20 minutes long now, and alliteration and rhyming.
We're stuck with it. Yeah.
No, we're stuck, and we can't change it because we've built an empire on the back of it. But Joe Hart was on that podcast. He was talking about his career to date and all that sort of stuff. And One of the things it did give me was a bit of insight into, sometimes you look at a player's career and you think, God, he's been everywhere and he's been all over the place and he's been at some terrible clubs and some bad decisions have been made. He's obviously a bit of a bad egg, but when you actually sit down and hear the player explain what's happened at all these different places, it gives you a bit of an insight and you think, God, well, maybe you shouldn't really judge a book by its cover. Maybe sometimes, players, it doesn't work out for various different reasons for players. And Joe Hart was talking about how Celtic approached them prior to joining Spurs, but Celtic got cold feet because they told him there was no sell-on value, and they were worried that they would bring him to the club and he would have no sell-on value. Then he said, who was that wee Spurs manager that got used to smoke? He lasted 6 months after Mourinho. He came from Wolves.
Oh, I didn't smoke, but
Nuno Espirito Santo.
Yes. I thought he used to smoke. They were making that joke in that podcast.
Oh, did
They were making that joke on the podcast. So they were saying that he was basically told that he's never going to kick a ball for his Spurs team because your body is broken.
You've got no strength in your body.
You've got no strength in your body. There comes a time in football.
What was it? I wouldn't trust you to play 1 minute of football for us.
Yeah. Wow. There comes a time your body
keeper as well.
can't handle the physicality of the game. And then he says after that he had a conversation with Ange and he just laid out, Melly, that what he wanted and what he expected from Joe, what he wanted and what he expected from his next move.
Yeah, and I think Joe Hart will be crucial on Sunday because the leadership he brings as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You heard him in
crucial.
that video. See that Ange video?
It's him. It sounds a wee bit Irish in it, I thought. What's he doing there? But as soon as Ange finished, him and McGregor, they're coming in. That's the two leaders in there, the two guys that you're really looking for. And it's the two guys that will just be, Cal McGregor spoke about it in a wee interview I seen today, just about staying calm and play the way we want to play. And if those two guys are telling you that they've got a wealth of experience, that's another reason I'm like, right, it'll be fine, even if we
Good
go
save
down.
good save in Ibrox tie.
Yeah,
Good
he's a
save,
good
Ibrox.
keeper and he's a good leader, so it's exactly what Celtic really need right now.
Talk about distances travelled and how far we've come as a team. Joe Hart, by Christ, he's gone from being told he's basically like finished. He's got no strength in he's got no bones in his body to go for that to number one keeper for Celtic and a crucial part of this team. And a crucial part of this fixture in such a short space of time. It's coming across like one of those stories you hear about how someone was told they would never walk again and they end up running a marathon. He was still a 32-year-old keeper at the time. Jesus.
The thing about Joe Hart is, one thing that struck me about Joe Hart is he's the sort of player that we rarely sign, like the aging guy, the sort of tail end of his career that puts in a shift and turns out really well. It's the sort of player Rangers always sign. Rangers seem to dig out these guys, late 30s, and they go, God, how have they got a turn out of him? Defoe, for example, Stephen Davis. How have you got a turn out of these guys? We've picked up Joe Hart and he's been absolutely solid for us. There was people like doubting him at the beginning.
Oh yeah,
obviously, as always happens. But there's just sometimes there's intangibles that players bring to games, and this leadership is one of them, and it's going to be crucial. That's another thing that we've not even mentioned. The leadership that we're going to have to need to go there to keep the game under wraps, to keep the cool heads, and to stick to the game plan. A lot of the time, these intangibles, Steve, they can win you a game.
That's why we love football, innit? It's just it's those kind of those mysteries, those chemistries that you can't necessarily measure out in terms of numbers or anything like that. Joe Hart has been a prime example of that. No one really thought it was going to work out. My doubt about him was not about how he can't play with his feet, can't save to his left and all that stuff. It was none of that stuff. It was just that he's quite a long way past his peak now at this point. And context is important because some of the names you've just rounded off for Rangers, we've had loads of them in the past. We've Carlton Cole, Freddie Lundberg and all these guys who previously had a good reputation come up here and did absolutely nothing. So to all intents and purposes, Joe Hart could have been exactly along those lines. We've seen so many of them over the years, but he's been the complete opposite of that. Absolute, total professional. He's here for the right reasons as well.
That's it.
I mean, he's not skint. He's not getting paid minimum wage, double time on a Saturday or anything like that. He is getting a decent wage, but he didn't come here as a pension pot. He could easily have gone and played for, take a pick, Leeds or something like that.
Said
I don't know why that's always my go-to example.
He actually said on that podcast that if he didn't get a club that suited him, he would have just went and did charity games and bounce matches and all that just to pass on some knowledge, because he said that in that podcast. He goes, I don't need the money.
No, even that, he could have gone and got himself one of these brilliant gigs down in England where you're a third choice keeper until you're about 45 or something like that, and
back
paid
to Man City,
getting paid about 80 grand a week. Could easily have done something like that. So he's here for the right reasons. He's playing it's been great for Celtic. Yeah. We've spoken about it a number of times, but I think it's important to bring it up just now. Once now that that's all come to light and ahead of this massive game for him, just how far he's come as well as Celtic have.
Did you hear that, Joe Hart? We were very kind to you there, so you need to put in a shift for us on Sunday because that's what we need from you. And on that, we will wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to everyone who listens. Thanks to everyone who watches us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a nice comment if you liked watching this podcast. We've had lots of really good feedback since we've joined YouTube. As always, patreon.com/20minute-tims is where you can join us on Sunday for full fan-led coverage of the game.
One more thing, Jay. One more thing before we wrap up. Now, don't buy into too much of this. I know there's huge pressure on this Celtic team getting the league back.
Right.
Finally getting...
This is off script.
Yeah, dispelling hoodoos and all that. But I swear to God, Celtic, if you ruin episode number 300 of this podcast, massive pressure on this, I swear to God, you'll have us to answer to.
This is Ibrox. That's what we're going to call it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for watching and listening.